Hi there, sleep paralysis and what to do about it. If you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that either you're suffering from this phenomena right now or you have experienced it in the past and trying to learn more about it, and if there's any possibility of stopping this from happening. If this is the case, then I have good news for you, because in this video I'm going to show you exactly how to stop this from happening. A lot of times when people complain about their experience, uh, people easily, carelessly dismiss them as being nightmares or hallucinations. But those of us who've experienced this, we know exactly what a nightmare, what a hallucination looks like, and what a sleep paralysis experience looks like. So we never get any convincing answers what to do with this phenomenon. And in this short video, I'm gonna do just that. At the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly what to do with this and how to deal with it next. Before I move to the actual instructions of what you need to do tonight to stop this from happening to you, I want to tell you background history behind what causes this phenomenon. So, in the beginning, there was God. And then God created everything: the universe, the different dimensions, the material world, the spiritual world, time and space. Among God's millions and billions of creation, one of his creation is planet Earth. And way before the first human being was created, planet Earth was populated by other creations of God. But today specifically, we're going to talk about one of his creation which interests us in our today's topic, and we're going to talk about the jinn. So what is jinn? In simple words, jinn is a race of creatures that God created before the race of mankind, or before the creation of first human being, as we all know, Adam. The jinn had been created in a dimension which is different from ours. They have been created by God in a spiritual dimension, and we human beings, we exist in a material dimension. Each one of these dimensions, they have their own sets of laws, their own creation, and their own creatures. In a material dimension, or in material world, the one which we are familiar with, as we all know, we have our own laws, commonly known as laws of the nature or the laws of the physics. Similarly, in a spiritual realm, in a spiritual dimension, they also have their own sets of laws which are different from ours. They also have their own creation and creatures which are different from the ones that we are familiar with. So these spiritual beings called the jinn, they lived on earth very similar to the way human beings are living today, meaning they had their own societies, their own communities. They lived as tribes and as families. They lived in the mountains and they lived in the flatlands. They had the laws and rules of their societies, and they're amongst the race of the jinn. They have females and males. They have sub races, the same way as human beings have. Like we have black and white and different races. The same with the jinn. The only difference between them and us is that they live in their own spiritual dimension, but with a very similar ways of life. So they have their own sub races, meaning the ones that we are familiar with are, we know that there are the jinn that can fly. There are the jinn that God gave them the ability of changing their shapes, meaning they're sort of like shapeshifters. Uh, They can take the shape of different objects without actually materializing themselves. Anyways, meaning the race of the jinn are very similar to the race of the mankind in a structural and societal sense. Uh, we have, of course, our differences. Some of the differences between mankind and the jinn are the jinn, God gave them the ability to live a lot longer than human beings. Our advantage over them is that we are a lot more powerful and a lot more intelligent than the race of the jinn. Uh, for example, there are some narrations saying that an 80-year-old jinn's intelligence capabilities are alike the ones that a 5-year-old human child might have. So definitely we have some advantages over them and they have some advantages over us. So this race of jinn, they were living on earth. They were living on earth in societies and they were living their own lives. Similar to human beings, the race of the jinn, God gave them the choice. They can choose between doing something good or doing something evil. Whilst the other creations of God, the ones that we know, like angels, they don't have that choice. The angels cannot choose to do good or to do evil. The angels do only what they're programmed. The angels don't have that choice. In the other hand, the race of the jinn and the race of the men, we do have that ability. God gave us that ability. We can choose between good and evil. Thus, the race of the jinn, they were living in their dimensions, and God would send them guidance, and they would have the option of obeying the laws of the God or disobeying the laws of the God. And as we have saints, as we human beings have people who go beyond normal human beings, and they exceed most of people in society in their piety, and they get very close people to God. They are known as like saints, or in many different traditions, they're called different names. So amongst the race of the jinn, uh, there was this one individual. This one individual, his name was Iblis. This individual, he was so good. He would always obey God's commands. He would worship God more than any other jinn out there. So as his piety was growing, God would increase his rank. God would increase his level amongst all other creations. So this individual, this Iblis, who was from the race of the jinn, he was getting better and better and better, and he was getting closer and closer to God. And one day, God decided that he would be lifted up and live amongst the angels in the heaven. So this Iblis, he was raised to the level of the angels. While he was not an angel, he was from the race of the jinn, he had the choice. The jinn did not have, the angels did not have the choice, while the Iblis living amongst the angels, he could choose. And then one day, God decided to create, as he calls it in the scriptures, his best creation, the first human being called Adam. I don't want to get into the details of this whole history of the beginning of the life of the human beings, but because it's important for us to understand the problem that we're talking about, I'm gonna go through it as fast as I can. So when God created the first human being, Adam, he called all the angels, all the creation that was up there in the heaven, and introduced to them Adam and asked them to bow down to Adam to show respect. It was not the bowing down of worship, rather, it was bowing down to show respect or obedience to God. And as we all know, all the angels, they don't have the option of obeying God or disobeying God. All angels obviously obeyed God and bowed down to the Adam, except for that one individual who was not an angel, who was a jinn, who had the choice of obeying God or disobeying God. And amongst all the bowing down angels, there was this one individual with his head up straight, refusing to bow down. And God asked him, "Why don't you bow? Why didn't you bow down to uh, to Adam?" And this Iblis, because he thought he was so pious, and this is a warning for those who get this spiritual arrogance, that he thought that he was better than Adam, and uh, he he did not deserve this kind of treatment. Kind of, he said to God's face that you created me from fire, and you created him from mud or from clay. And of course, the uh, fire is more superior to clay or to the mud. That's why I'm not going to bow down to him, because I am better than him. This was the beginning, this was the birth of racism. This was the first incident in the history of God's creation where one individual considered himself better than the other just because of the looks. Not because of the piety, but just because of the looks. So from that moment on, God cursed him. God cursed this angel, this jinn, this Iblis, and from that moment his name was changed to Satan. He was accursed Satan. And God said that you're going to be thrown into hellfire. But this Satan, he raised his hands to God and said, "Give me time until the end of the time, until the day of judgment, so I can spend time amongst them and misguide them from the straight path." And God accepted his plea, and he was given that time. And then Adam, later, he was placed in the Garden of Eden or in the paradise, whatever you will. And he was living there for a while, and after some time he got bored, and God gave him his wife Eve, and they were living there. And as we know, the biblical and Quranic story of Adam and Eve, what happened later on is Satan was among them. He took the shape of the serpent and misguided, try to misguide Adam for a while, and he wasn't successful. And then he did it with Eve, and later on, he was able to misguide Eve, which later they ate from the one tree in the paradise that God told them not to come close to. When they disobeyed God, listening to Satan, and they ate from that tree, then God sent them to earth. Now, when God sent Adam and Eve to earth, what do we know from the previous history? We know that earth was populated with who? With the race of the jinn. So now Adam, Eve, and Satan, they're all on earth. And God told Adam, "You are going to be living here for a while as a punishment for disobeying God. But I'm going to be sending you guys guidance. Those of you who follow the guidance, nothing can harm you. Those who don't follow the guidance, they're the ones basically who are going to be in trouble." So when Adam and Eve ended up on earth, the jinn were living on the spiritual dimension, and the human beings, they started their life in the material dimension. And these two dimensions, uh, uh, according to God's law, they're not supposed to interact with one another. We are not allowed to communicate or get in contact with the world of the jinn. In the same way, the jinn are not allowed, God forbade them, to get in contact or in touch with the world, with the material world, with our world. But as we know, there's always among the people, there's always among the creation who have the choice. They can choose to obey God or disobey God. So the mankind spread, and then the jinn were living their own lives. And among the jinn, there are the pious the jinn who mind their own business. They live their own lives, and they never interact with human beings. The same with us. Us being good human beings, those who obey the God's laws, and we are obedient servants of God. We never try to get in contact with the jinn, while we know that they live all around us. We don't see them, but God gave them the ability of seeing us. They see us, but we don't see them. We don't get in any sort of interaction with them, except for the transgressing ones amongst the human beings and from amongst the jinn. Those human beings that transgress the, the laws of the God, disobey God, and then can't get in contact with the jinn, it is possible. We know these individuals as uh, magicians or sorcerers, or in different traditions they're called different. And some of the well-known individuals are like Aleister Crowley. He uh, he got in touch with them, and he got a lot of messages and formulas and magic spells learned from the jinn. The same with the jinn. Only the wickedest jinn, only the worst of the worst of the jinn, they will break the laws of the God and get in contact with human beings, or in any way, shape, or form will try to interact in human beings' daily life. And those kind of jinn are in many. Those are called the Satans. Those are all of those jinn who disobey God's law. They're all called Satans. But the big Satan, of course, is the Iblis, that original one who disobeyed God. And this big Satan, or known as Iblis or Lucifer, he lives amongst other jinn, and he have his own army. All the evil jinn, they're all under basically his control. He controls all these evil jinn. Uh, Getting to the point. So when human beings live their own life, every now and then these evil jinn, these immaterial spiritual beings, they get in contact with us. They interfere with our daily lives. And human beings are created a little bit more complicated than just a material beings. We are the combination of material, which is our body, and then we have, of course, our soul, which lives in the spiritual realm. And our body is entirely controlled by our soul. Uh, our soul, when we go to sleep, our soul comes out of our body and hangs out in this immaterial world, and sometimes travels to different locations. And when it's time for us to wake up, our soul, comes back, enters our body, and then we wake up and continue our world. And most of the times, we don't remember what our soul was up to when it was out of our body. So the sleep of a human being is kind of a going back and forth. The soul of human being during the sleep goes back and forth between the spiritual dimension, that's the dimension where the jinn exists, and then the material dimension. So in the cases of sleep paralysis, what happens is when our soul comes out of our body, hanging in this spiritual dimension, some of these evil jinn who are not supposed to be doing this, who do this in contradiction to God's commands, they get to our body and they block the soul entering back to the body. This is exactly what happens while we're trying to wake up. And we call this is known to us as sleep paralysis or whatever you want to call it. But that's what's going on. This evil spirits or this evil race of the jinn, when we try to wake up, they prevent our soul entering our body. And this is why when during that moment where our soul is battling trying to get in, we are partially awake but we're not fully awake. This is why a lot of times we are able to move our body a little bit, open our eyes, and a lot of times we feel these presence around us. We know there is something around. This is why we get so terrified. This is why whenever we hear the explanations of psychiatrists or whoever that we are hallucinating or there's something going on in our brain, we are not convinced because we know that we are feeling a sort of presence around us, and there is a presence. A lot of times, multiple. So, if this situation is happening to us, now we know what's going on during this sleep paralysis. So, what do we do? What do we do when this happens to us? Frankly, while it's happening to us, we cannot do much, but we can do a lot before we go to sleep to prevent this from happening to us. As I mentioned earlier, God said, I'm going to be sending you guidance. And those of you who follow this guidance, no harm is going to come towards them. And God, throughout the history of mankind, sent us many, many messages and books. Unfortunately, the evil nature of human being, we always tend to mess with God's law. God sent us Bible. God sent us the Old Testament, rather. What did we do? We haven't saved the original scripture that was sent to us. Nor do we even have the copy of the original scripture. What we have is the translation of the translation of the translation of it, which is basically with so many human writings, and not there's still big aspects of God's words in it, but not much of it left. Basically, this is one example. But throughout the history of mankind, human being continuously lost the scriptures from God. And then the last scripture that God sent to mankind, in that last scripture, God said that I am going to protect this until the day of judgment. It's not going to be conditioned. It is not going to be changed. And this scripture, the words of these scriptures, which are the words of the God, these are the weapons we can use against the evil spirits. There are some human beings who fight the evil spirits using their own evil methods, which are completely outside the boundaries that God drawn. Rather, we have to battle these evil jinn with the weapons that God gave us. So coming to the end of this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to prevent those evil jinn from messing with your life again. And I'm going to put a couple of links below where you can download a audio recitations of this last message sent by God. And you can take that audio recitation of that book and you play it in your house. And when you play it in your house, all these evil jinn who are trying to come into your house and interact with your life, they're going to be prevented by that. Basically, those sounds, those sound waves, So in other words, all you need to do is very simple to prevent this terrifying experience happening to you again. All you have to do is download this audio recording to your computer or to your device and play it through the speakers. I don't recommend using the headphones because they're not going to be as effective. At the same time, you don't want them to be too loud and going to prevent you from sleeping, but loud enough to keep those jinn away from you and from your house. At the end, uh, I would ask, or I would respectfully ask each one of you to be very, very respectful when you're playing those audio recordings. uh, you have to understand that these are the words respected. And at the end, I recommend you to research more about this latest revelation by that one God who sent all the scriptures, including Bible and Torah, and all the prophets beginning from Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. And the latest prophet through whom this latest preserved text that was sent was Prophet Muhammad. Thank you for your attention, and I really hope that this terrifying experience is not gonna happen to any one of you again.